For Arthur Machen. In fact, that could be the title. For Arthur Machen. Haunted, you say? Oliver uncrossed his legs and sat forward, narrowing his eyes in the firelight to better frame his reply and stroking his chin for the full effect of thoughtfulness and bemused reflection. Words were well and good when it came to ghost stories, but over time he had found this English gentry, to whose tightrope allegiance he had committed equal shares of ribald and tweed, relied less on subject or substance than affectations of their narrator. He only wished that he had thought ahead to provide 2 elderly wolfhounds to lounge before the fire, or present his host with a bison head to mount on the drawing-room wall and cast unaccustomed shadows upon the parquetry, or, in the very least, ensure the brandy decanter had at least 2 extra layers of dust. As it was, an arched eyebrow and hands clasped in a steeple beneath his chin would have to suffice. Indeed, Dyson, though I do hazard from the term, haunted seems so unanchored these days, so misappropriated. One cannot visit his mother for fear of eldritch vapours or childhood phantoms stealing into conversation. A new century beckons, yet here we still remark that a lady may appear haunted beneath her parasol in the full light of day. Children may be said to seem haunted after a loss at Hunt the Thimble. On that account you may be wholly correct, Dyson replied, distractedly tamping his pipe with the offhand solemnity of a magistrate purchasing incense from a Burmese trader. My youngest, Annabeth, does seem possessed of a deathly seriousness when engaged in the thimble hunt. Oh, laugh all you want. We're not long for a time we might stroll the butcheries of Hemlock Street and remark on the haunted expression on the heads of swine in the window. Words are not what they were, but still, it is my belief that what we might call the soul of the expression remains itself unchanged. An eponymous moon would not cease its function were mankind to alight to different stars. Each anonymous fire shall continue to burn. At this both men turned their heads slightly to gaze upon the fireplace, which stoically refused to shift even a single log in a brief atmospheric display of dying embers and sputtering flame, failing entirely to disrupt the slumber of hounds Oliver had not thought to provide. The door from the hallway opened and Dyson's houseboy entered, quietly advancing to stand by his master's chair. Oliver recrossed his legs. He overheard once that the boy came from Oxfordshire, and one could never be too careful. No, we've everything we need, thank you, Jarvis. You may have the rest of the evening off. Ensure the house is locked before you leave. Dyson waited until the door had closed behind the houseboy and his footsteps receded. He pushed away the fringe that had fallen across his eyes and turned back to his guest. All right, Oliver. We're alone. Your proposition, I am to assume, is that the word haunted itself may be considered haunted. I further deduce from your arched eyebrow, which, might I say, you've managed to maintain for a rather impressive length of time, that you are not speaking figuratively. Indeed not, Oliver mused. I suspect that certain elements of civil society, of which language and economics are just as acceptable as religion, may potentially be bestowed with properties not inherent to their design. New dimensions are bestowed for which the word or gesture is simply a stopgap, to arrest the emotion of far greater implications that threaten to surge forward and overwhelm. Ah, Dyson ahed, carefully pouring himself a glass from the decanter. So we come at last to your haunted elephant. Well, it was the elephant hunter who was, as you say, haunted, but my point exactly. You're suggesting then that in killing this beast before its time, this hunter of yours incurred the wrath of a vengeful elephant spirit, some wild Somalian shade slamming windows and trumpeting in the dead of night. Not at all. No, the calamity this fellow faced, who, for the sake of fidelity, I shall call M, was more insidious than the rattling of midnight chains or ghostly melodies heard from empty rooms. He, too, held little time for macabre tales handed down from the Celtic whimsy. It was more the manner of the elephant's death that troubled him. It was brought down in a province apparently sensitive to the tribesmen who had joined him on the exhibition, and though custom would have them divide the carcass between local families, they refused to so much as touch it. Its death had transgressed some primitive boundary, and they forswore the elephant as cursed. This M took no heed of their superstitions, of course, but upon his return to England he encountered much to shake his rational heart. Nothing overt, at least to begin with. The brushing of something against his ankle as he climbed into bed of an evening, or breath hot and heavier than any person could exhale upon his back while he slept. Yet when I saw him last, he could no longer bring himself to even peer into a mirror for fear of a briefly glimpsed, enormous black eye clouding his reflection. Here Oliver paused, watching his companion for signs of disbelief or frustration. But Dyson remained perfectly still, pipe smouldering, staring across the room at a closed door leading to an adjoining library. He waited a moment, then continued. Now I believe I am a sensible man, and I would safely vouch the same for M. To the end, he did not believe himself to be pursued by malevolent African spirits, but by his own rational mind, having given unnatural courtesy to an idea that had since developed into something dreadfully foreign to the world of reason. To be haunted is perhaps a private affair, and we give life to the things we hold closest to our inner hearts. When they found M, he was alone in his study, his bookshelves and bureau undisturbed, and trampled to a bloody heap in a corner of the room. Oliver stopped as Dyson muttered something beneath his breath. What was that you said, Dyson? We give life to the things we hold closest, his host repeated. Indeed so. Officially, of course, the death is considered the work of a madman, as nothing of any value was removed from the house. And besides, there were no signs of any forced... I say, Dyson, are you feeling all right? You've come over quite queer. His host had remained staring across the room at the library door through the duration of his account, and Dyson's expression now displayed neither curiosity nor disinterest in Oliver's story. Rather, there was something forlorn in his countenance, a kind of confused sadness, as an old man recalling a passage of tragedy in his far-past youth. Tell me, Oliver, how many children do I have? Why, you've 5 daughters, as I recall. 5 daughters. Sometimes I forget. You forget? Come now, Dyson, a man does not forget his own offspring, especially not when they are as cherished as yours. What are you getting at here? You seem pale. Perhaps I should fetch a doctor. Have I ever spoken of my father to you, Oliver? No, I suppose not. This was his house, passed on to me after he died. He lived in London in the last years of his life, refused to even step foot across the threshold here. A man after your own taste, resolute but not without his peculiarities. He left little in the way of inheritance beyond the house and some few £100, and a fear of empty rooms. Oliver found himself joining Dyson's vigil at the library door. He'd been into the room several times before, a small room, windowless, lined with bookshelves and maps of antiquity. The only access to the library was through the very door they now faced in strange and heavy silence. You've had the experience yourself, I'm sure, Dyson continued, walking into a vacant room with the suspicion, no, the utmost certainty, that it has only recently been vacated by somebody. As though on entering some unsupposed self had slipped away through another door or remains hidden still behind window drapes, behind chairs. My father was convinced of it, you see, convinced. One afternoon he nailed boards against the library door, barring it from opening in. He needed to prove to himself that were he to exit the empty room and promptly return, there would be nobody there. No way to escape. It was the only way he could ascertain that he was still sane. Dyson turned away from the door, and Oliver let out a shaking breath at the raw, brutal pain he saw silhouetted in his host's eyes. I lost them, you see. My beautiful girls. I told them of father's phobia, not thinking anything of it other than an odd obsession they might laugh over. But you're right, Oliver. Certain words, certain deeds, they have schemes of their own. And they breathe. No, they pant. They pant in their gluttony to be more than the simple terms which we use to describe them. 5 days after telling them of this story, my eldest daughter, Lucy, hung herself in the parlour. Oliver was taken aback. My God, Dyson. Dyson, I had no idea, I hadn't heard. 4 days later, Martha, my second eldest. The scullery maid found her hanging from a pear tree in the common, there for all the world to pass by and see, turning in the morning breeze. 3 days after that, my God, Oliver, it wouldn't stop. When finally there was none but Annabeth remaining, I took her abroad, desperate to be rid of the house. But it found her. on a steamer headed across the channel. I returned to our room and there she was, hanging from the light fitting. She was 4 years old, Oliver. What little girl could possibly... 4 years old. Since then, I can't shake the word from my mind. It nestles in my thoughts like a cyst. Hanging. It holds a grim new meaning for me, and I find relation to the term, for I am myself hanging now like a portrait hung askew on a wall. Dyson rose from his chair, eyes downcast. He walked across the room to the hallway door and opened it, shoulders slightly hitching, and Oliver realised he was weeping. You must forgive me, Oliver. But these words run circles through my mind, and I keep hearing footsteps where no soul has trod, and every corner I turn has the lingering sound of young girls laughing, and God help me, I know now that grief is forever repeating and no hell is fresh. He stepped through the door and began closing it as Oliver bounded from his chair. Dyson, hold on a minute, man. Dyson! He reached the door and turned the handle uselessly. Dyson, unlock this door, confound you. Silence from the hallway. He turned to search the room for a telephone and shortly found himself before the library door. Studying it close, he saw there in uniform marks upon the frame ran a series of indentations. Holes in the chipped wood from boards that had been hastily removed. Oliver turned abruptly and stared back towards the fire, burning low and infernal, and what he saw were not logs at all, but planks of splintered wood. A chill coursed across his flesh, and he began to retreat back towards the hallway when the library door suddenly swung open, and Oliver stumbled back, gasping involuntarily and collapsing into his chair. A figure came through the door slowly, its dimensions that of a man, but its face a mess of shifting features. First a mass of smacking lips, then a stunted fist hideously deformed, a monstrous black unseen eye, the yawning face of a drowned cat, something glistening and tentacled as though dredged reluctantly from the sea. It shuffled across the room, and Oliver felt his heart lurch to his throat as he realised what he had first mistook for muttered words was the sound of the thing panting. It reached the fireplace and sat down heavily upon the facing chair, its face finally resolving itself into familiar tragic features. The thing reached up a hand to push back its fringe, removed a pipe from its pocket, and looked at last up into Oliver's eyes and smiled. Haunted, you say? There you go.